All right, everyone. So Ben Fox tweeted out, he's a senior sports betting analyst for Yahoo Sports. He tweeted out the three most bet NFL teams to miss the playoffs by total wagers at BetMGM. So I was pretty shocked by this list. You have the Lions, you have the Saints, and you have the San Francisco 49ers. So the Saints, let's start with them at number two. They're the only one here that makes a lot of sense to me because they're probably, if there's parlays, right? They're probably a part of a lot of parlays because people are saying this is a team we don't think has a chance in hell of making the playoffs. With that being said, the Lions being number one is quite shocking to me because we're not talking about, not winning the championship. We're talking to completely miss the playoffs. Now, I understand why, right? I do understand why you have this situation where, he's lost. When I mean Dan Campbell lost two coordinators, right? And not small coordinators, right? Offense and defensive coordinators. So you figure there might be a step back. Also in a supremely tough division with the really three teams that are good. I mean, the Saints, not the Saints, the Packers, the Bears, and the Vikings, all really good teams. All really, really good teams, all teams that could make the playoffs. So I'm not completely out of the question that potentially could be a team that misses the playoffs. I'm just shocked it's the number one bet one. I am shocked by that. On the 49ers front, I'm a little bit surprised by that one too. Now look, I think they're a lock to make the playoffs? Definitely not. Nowhere near, not even close. But still, like I said, we're talking about the most shocking to us. And they're both plus money. So I do understand that we're looking at a plus money bet, and that does make a little bit of sense. But plus 165, plus 150, it's just not, in my opinion, the craziest odds in the world. And I just think, like the Saints, I get because it's probably a part of some parlays, right? That's would be my guess. But the other two, it just feels like, and maybe they're very close to others. I'm just stunned to see those teams there. I can understand the thinking, but I'm stunned that those are the two that come up, especially the Lions being one, because I understand they lost coordinators, but a lot of what the Lions had last year remains intact, and they're getting a little bit healthier. I think that alone should put them, not at this list. So I'm on my DraftKings account right now. I'm looking at it, and I want to give some interesting um, lines here, potentially who I think could have been bet more. It's interesting because on here the Niners and the Lions are 5 and 6 in terms of the best odds, right? So the Bills are number one at plus 500 to miss the playoffs, Ravens plus 390, Eagles plus 300, and Chiefs plus 290. And then we get the 49ers and Lions. So that alone tells me a little bit, and I know this is on BetMGM, but tells me a little bit as to why they may have been the most, the best bet because the Chiefs people probably aren't betting that. The Eagles people probably aren't betting that. The Ravens people aren't betting that. And the Bills, their people aren't betting that just based off the division that they're in, right? So I get that a little bit. But then I do look and I go, okay, a team like the Buccaneers, right? The Buccaneers are in a division that they kind of just win year after year after year. And it's not really a strong division, but also, anything can happen in a division like that because it's always so close. So I'm surprised there's not maybe more on that, but it's probably people that are scared off by the rest of the division. The Rams at plus 130, I think a lot of people think they're going to be really good. Not shocked by that. Another one here, the Commanders plus 130. You talk about the NFC East. The NFC East is going to be a little bit better this year. I think the Giants are going to be better. I think the Cowboys are going to be better than they were last year. And the Eagles, although they're not going to be better, they're going to be around the same, which is pretty good, right? And you have a Commanders team that's having problems with Terry McLaurin. You have a Commanders team that has a great rookie quarterback who's now going into his sophomore year. The sophomore slump. Remember last year the Giants played them tough in both games. Probably should have won, honestly, both of those games. So it's one of those things that I'm surprised that when you're talking about a team like the Lions or the Niners, I'm surprised the Commanders aren't a team that's more wagered to miss the playoffs, knowing that sophomore slump might be coming. Then we got the Bengals. Look, the Bengals are another one. I really think they are so one-sided right now on one side of the football. They're so great in offense, not necessarily in the defensive end. Surprised we're not seeing more Bengals bets because they've done a lot on the offensive end. The Broncos at plus 115. The Bengals, if they do get in, right, if people think they're going to get in, well, there's going to have to be a team then that comes out. Could that be the Broncos? Maybe that's the Steelers, but still. The Chargers at plus 115, they're another team that could potentially be part of that group to come out. The Packers, the Texans. Look, I think it's tough with the Texans just because of the Texans division. The Packers, though, I think people probably just have more faith in them than the Lions at this point, which is a really interesting development. And then you have the Vikings at minus 110, and all the other teams are kind of minus. So I'm a little stunned, but I do understand after looking at kind of all of these teams in total, the value play that people are seeing, right? They view the Lions. Let's say you bet the Lions and you bet the 49ers, and you think one of those teams isn't going to make it. You bet both, it's plus money. So if as long as you win one, you're technically up money. Maybe that's what a lot of people are thinking. But I do, after kind of looking through the teams and where the odds lay, I understand these are the two big out of all those top. They're in the top six, so you're getting pretty good odds for teams that do have a tough road to make the playoffs. Because the 49ers, you're going to be dealing with a Rams team that is quite good, right? I mean, the Rams are quite good. They were last year, and if they're anything like they were last year, the 49ers aren't going to be able to just kind of, walk into the playoffs by winning the division. They're either going to have to get a wild card or be better than the Rams. On the Lions end, I mean, look, the Lions could have a really good year and still not make the playoffs because you have all these other great teams in their division. And, look, not I personally think they're going to be in the playoffs, but I do understand where these are coming from. It's just shocking to see, the Lions at number one on missing the playoffs. So thank you all for watching.